Country Joe McDonald, Country Joe McDonald Death. Biography. Woodstock, 1969. Vietnam War protest songs. Country Joe McDonald was not just a musician. He became one of the loudest musical voices against war in the 1960s. From psychedelic rock stages to the historic Woodstock Festival, his music carried powerful political messages that shaped an entire generation. Country Joe McDonald was born in 1942 in Washington, D.C. His early life later led him toward music, activism, and political expression. Before becoming famous, he served as a U.S. Navy veteran stationed in Japan, an experience that later influenced his strong views about war and politics. Many years later, after decades of music and activism, Country Joe McDonald passed away in 2026 in Berkeley, California. The reported cause of death was Parkinson's disease, ending the life of one of the most recognizable protest singers in American history. His real impact on music began when he entered the psychedelic rock movement of the 1960s. Country Joe McDonald co-founded the band Country Joe and the Fish with musician Barry Melton. The band quickly became part of the rising psychedelic rock scene in California. Their music mixed political protest, experimental sound, and cultural commentary that perfectly reflected the turbulent 1960s era. One of their most important releases was the album Electric Music for the Mind and Body. The album helped define the psychedelic rock movement and placed the band among the pioneers of that genre. Country Joe and the Fish were not just creating music for entertainment. Their songs often carried social messages, questioning authority, war, and the direction of American politics during the Vietnam War era. While his band brought him early fame, Country Joe McDonald later developed a powerful solo career. His solo work showed another side of his musical personality. Over time, he released more than 30 studio albums, exploring folk, political commentary, storytelling, and American musical traditions. Among his most recognized solo songs were Thinking of Woody Guthrie and War, War, War. These songs reflected his admiration for earlier protest musicians and his continued criticism of war and government decisions. His solo career proved that he was not just part of a band, but a long-lasting voice in American protest music. However, the moment that truly cemented his place in music history happened in 1969 at the Woodstock Festival. Woodstock 1969 became one of the most iconic music festivals in the world, and Country Joe McDonald delivered one of the most unforgettable performances of the entire event. During Woodstock, he performed an iconic solo performance that shocked and energized the massive crowd. That performance included the legendary chant known as the Fish Cheer, often remembered for the famous moment where the audience spelled out the controversial chant that began with, "Give me an F." This moment became one of the most talked about scenes in Woodstock history. Immediately after the cheer, he launched into the song I-Feel-Like-I'm-Fixin To-Die Rag. The performance turned into a massive bouncing ball-style sing-along with thousands of people joining in. The song's sarcastic lyrics criticized the Vietnam War and the way young soldiers were sent to fight. The song quickly became an anti-war anthem of the Vietnam War era. It represented the anger and frustration many young Americans felt during that time. The performance at Woodstock helped transform the song into one of the most recognizable protest songs in American music history. I-Feel-Like-I'm-Fixin To-Die Rag stood out because it used satirical protest lyrics. Instead of traditional, serious protest music, the song used humor and irony to criticize war policies. The lyrics carried dark humor often called GI humor, reflecting the grim reality soldiers faced. The song also openly placed blame on political leaders and the military industry, accusing them of sending young men to war for questionable reasons. Because of its controversial language and direct criticism, the song became unplayable on many mainstream radio stations. Despite this, it spread widely through live performances and the counterculture movement. Beyond music, Country Joe McDonald also became deeply involved in activism and social causes. One of the areas he focused on was veterans advocacy. Even though he criticized war, he strongly supported veterans who served in the military. He worked with projects connected to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Berkeley, helping recognize and support those who returned from war. He also supported organizations like Swords to Plowshares, a group dedicated to helping veterans rebuild their lives after military service. This work showed that his protest against war was not against the soldiers, but against the political decisions that led to war. Country Joe McDonald also became active in environmental causes. He supported movements that raised awareness about protecting nature and marine life. One of the causes he backed was the Save the Whales movement, which became a major environmental campaign during the 1970s. He also collaborated with Greenpeace, one of the world's most well-known environmental organizations. Through concerts, activism, and public appearances, he used his influence to support environmental protection and global awareness. Later in life, Country Joe McDonald also became involved in a historical and educational effort called the Nightingale Project. This project focused on preserving the Florence Nightingale Archive, an important historical collection connected to the history of nursing and medical scholarship. Through this project, he helped support the preservation of historical knowledge related to nursing scholarship and medical history. It showed another side of his personality, someone interested in education, history, and preserving important cultural records. Across decades, Country Joe McDonald's journey moved through many phases: musician, protest singer, activist, historian, and storyteller. His music captured the spirit of the 1960s counterculture, while his activism continued long after the Vietnam War ended. From forming Country Joe and the Fish, to releasing influential psychedelic rock albums, to standing on the Woodstock stage singing anti-war songs with thousands of people, he became one of the defining voices of a generation. His music was never just about melodies. It was about politics, protest, and social awareness. Songs like I-Feel-Like-I'm-Fixin To-Die Rag remain powerful reminders of how music can challenge authority and inspire people to question the world around them. Country Joe McDonald's legacy lives on through his recordings, his activism, and the historical moments he helped shape. His voice became a symbol of protest music, and his Woodstock performance remains one of the most iconic moments in music history. Even after his passing in 2026 in Berkeley, California, his influence continues to echo through political music, folk protest traditions, and the story of the 1960s counterculture movement. Country Joe McDonald may be gone, but the message he carried through his music, questioning war, supporting veterans, protecting the environment, and speaking truth through art, remains part of his lasting legacy.